Have you ever wondered if the obstacles crushing your plans were not accidents, but a hidden summons from heaven itself? What if the chaos swirling around your life is not evidence of your failure, but the precise conditions God prepared to awaken you? There is a secret many never discover. What feels like abandonment is often a deliberate invitation to step into a destiny that terrifies your comfort. What you are wrestling with in the darkness, the gnawing uncertainty you can't silence, the hollow ache that you are meant for more. These are not random afflictions. They are the first tremors of a sacred awakening. Stop for a moment. Look deeper. Why are you hearing this message now? Out of the billions of voices vying for your attention, why is this the one gripping your heart and refusing to let go? This is not merely content. It is an urgent summons, a spiritual alarm sounding in your innermost being, calling you to recognize the crossroads in front of you. Perhaps you have been trudging through your days carrying a private disappointment no one else sees. You've tried to convince yourself that this season of delay or confusion is just a rough patch you will soon outgrow. Yet something deeper is whispering. This is not a passing inconvenience. This is a divine interruption. There is something God wants you to see that you have refused to face. Something He has been trying to reveal through every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every unexpected silence. You are not standing in this moment by accident. You are here because the next stretch of your life will require a level of faith and surrender that you have never practiced. Have you been asking why your old ways have stopped working? Why the strategies that used to bring progress now leave you drained and fruitless? Have you wondered if you missed your moment, if your chances have slipped beyond your grasp? Listen carefully. This is the moment where everything can shift. But it won't happen through striving harder or clinging tighter to your plans. It will happen when you dare to consider that God Himself has closed certain paths to protect you from becoming smaller than your calling demands. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you prayed for breakthrough while secretly hoping God would let you stay in the safety of your routine? How often have you asked for a fresh start without releasing the very attachments choking your spirit? What if the reason you feel pressed on every side is because you are being prepared to carry a mantle that will not fit the smaller version of yourself you are desperately trying to preserve? This isn't just about getting through another season. This is about uncovering the true nature of your journey. You have been chosen for something that cannot be sustained by borrowed convictions or inherited habits. You are standing at a threshold where you must decide if you will keep measuring your progress by what is visible or if you will finally allow yourself to trust the invisible hand that has never left you. Consider these questions as the doorway to your next season. What if your delay was never punishment but a divine recalibration? What if every rejection was God's way of sparing you from settling for a counterfeit purpose? What if the supply you have been begging for has always been waiting behind a decision you have refused to make? Scripture says in Isaiah 43:19, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." These words are not an empty promise for someone else. They are a declaration over you, right here in the rawness of your uncertainty. So I must ask you plainly, are you willing to consider that the crisis in your life is not evidence of your inadequacy, but the precise environment required for your calling to emerge? Can you look at what seems like ruins and believe that divine construction is underway? This moment is not an accident. The fact that your heart is pounding and your mind is racing as you hear these words is proof that God has been stirring you toward this realization for far longer than you have admitted. You have been sensing that something critical was coming, a season where you would either shrink into comfort or step fully into the purpose that has been stalking your conscience. Do not dismiss this as another motivational message you can file away for later. You do not have later. The next 3 days are not ordinary. They are charged with spiritual consequence. They are an appointed window of clarity in which your choices will set the direction for years to come. This is not the time to pretend you are fine. This is the time to confront every lie that has kept you stuck. The time to question every compromise you made out of fear. The time to admit that your plans are too small for the weight of your destiny. You are standing in the collision between who you have been and who you must become, and you cannot afford to turn away. Now let me take you further. Let's name what is really happening in your life so you can stop blaming yourself for what is simply divine intervention disguised as disruption. Let's strip away the polite explanations and see the deeper currents at work. Because once you understand the hidden purpose behind your delays, your losses and your unfulfilled desires, you will never again doubt that you are held by a God who provides not merely for your comfort, but for your transformation. Are you ready to look past what you can see and open your spirit to the possibility that everything you have called failure has been preparation? Because in these next moments, the illusion that you are left alone will be shattered, and the truth you were never told will finally be revealed. You didn't see it, but every step you thought was wasted was actually leading you to the edge of something sacred. Your life was never a random sequence of successes and failures. It has been a carefully woven tapestry of divine orchestration. The places you called disappointments were detours designed to extract your dependence on what cannot sustain you. The closed doors were not God's rejection, they were His fierce protection. Let's name it plainly, you have been living under the illusion that your provision is tied to predictable channels, your job, your relationships, your reputation. You believed that if you simply worked harder, strategized smarter, and stayed likable enough, you could manufacture a life worthy of respect. But what if all that striving has been a smokescreen distracting you from the only truth that matters? What if God has been dismantling your usual supports because He intends to build a life that no one, including you, can take credit for? It is here in this confusing season where nothing seems to fit that the deeper rhythm of His guidance emerges. He has allowed your plans to dissolve because they were never big enough to hold His purpose. He has let certain opportunities vanish because they would have tethered you to a smaller existence. What you thought was a delay has always been divine preparation. I know you may be questioning this. You may be wondering if your lack of progress is a sign of God's displeasure. But hear me, your inability to make things happen in your own strength is not evidence of failure. It is proof that you have reached the end of human strategy and are ready to step into supernatural provision. Consider the hidden story of Joseph. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and unjustly imprisoned. Every outward sign pointed to rejection and loss. But beneath the surface, an unseen hand was moving the pieces into place. What looked like defeat was the forging of character strong enough to carry a nation through famine. Without the pit, there would have been no palace. Without the prison, there would have been no platform. And so it is with you. You have not been forgotten. You have been prepared. Here's what was hidden. Your delays were not about punishing you. They were about emptying you. Emptying you of pride, of self-sufficiency, of the illusion that you could fulfill a divine calling through human effort. Because if you could have succeeded without Him, you would have settled for less. I know this is not the narrative you have heard. The world teaches you to believe that your worth is measured by visible achievement, that you are only as significant as your accomplishments. But the kingdom does not operate on those terms. In God's economy, the most fruitful seasons often begin in the shadows, in the hidden places where your faith is tested and your motives are purified. Pause and consider, how many of your prayers have been desperate pleas for God to bless your plans, rather than invitations for him to replace them with his. How often have you prayed for clarity when he was trying to teach you trust? Let me share a story that will ground this truth in reality. Years ago, a young woman I mentored came to me in tears. She had poured her life into building a nonprofit she believed God had called her to start. For 5 years, she worked without pay, survived on donations, and watched as others succeeded while she struggled. At the end of the 5th year, her largest supporter withdrew, leaving her with no funding, no backup plan, and no explanation. She was convinced she had failed God, that her inability to sustain the work proved she wasn't worthy of the calling. But what she couldn't see was that the very week her funding evaporated, a group she'd never met had been praying for someone to lead a new initiative, one that would impact far more people than she had ever dreamed. Because she was no longer tethered to her small plan, she was available when the invitation came. Within 6 months, she was leading a movement that reached thousands. Her story is your story. What you think is the end may be the only way God can birth something larger than you have imagined. What feels like a loss may be the clearing of the old to make space for an assignment you could never have orchestrated. This is the truth you were never told. You are not being punished. You are being positioned, so let's speak plainly. You have come to a moment that demands a decision. Will you keep trying to resurrect plans God has already buried? Will you keep begging him to bless strategies he never authored? Or will you release what is no longer fruitful so your hands are free to receive what comes next? Because here is what no one warns you. Divine provision rarely arrives when you still cling to your own understanding. It comes when you have surrendered your right to know every detail. This is why the next 3 days are crucial. They are not just a countdown on the calendar. They are an invitation to step into alignment. You must decide whether you will keep measuring your progress by human metrics or whether you will trust the unseen flow of God's supply. You must decide whether you will keep asking for signs or whether you will move forward on the basis of his character alone. You must decide whether you will keep building on your past or whether you will release it and embrace the unfamiliar path he is opening. You have been trained to believe that your success depends on predictable methods, but the next season of your life will not follow that pattern. The next season will look like water appearing in the desert, favor coming from strangers, opportunities opening that your resume cannot justify. And it will all be because you finally dared to believe that God is still the source, not your credentials, not your connections, not your savings, not your talent. This is the climax of your story, the unveiling of a truth so liberating that once you see it, you can never return to the life you had before. What you thought was a curse was actually your calling. What you thought was the collapse of your dreams was the only way he could lead you into the dreams he has always had for you. And when you look back on this moment, when you remember the confusion, the emptiness, the frustration, you will see that it was the birthplace of something you could never have created on your own. You will stand in the middle of provision that defies explanation. You will look into the eyes of those who doubted you and know that no human could have orchestrated this. This is the season where God will prove that your life has never depended on visible resources. And you will finally understand that when he closes a door, it is never to punish, it is always to protect, to prepare, and to position you for something greater. So what does this mean for you? What must you do when the props of your old life have been removed and the familiar pathways have vanished? It means you must embrace a truth that many resist their entire lives. You were not created for safety. You were created for surrender. You were never meant to piece together a predictable existence. You were called to walk in daily dependence on the one whose supply can never be exhausted. So here is what you must do now. First, stop asking to be released from the pressure. Instead, ask for the courage to walk through it. Because the discomfort you feel is not an enemy. It is evidence that the Spirit is stretching you beyond the limits of who you have been. Second, let go of the narrative that your delays are punishments. Begin to see them as preparation. Every moment you spent wondering if God had forgotten you was actually a season of root growth, underground, invisible, but absolutely essential. Third, stop comparing your progress to the timelines of others. You do not know the battles they are fighting in secret. You do not see the cost of their apparent success. God has assigned you a unique race, and you will never run it well while glancing sideways. Fourth, return to your first love. Before the plans and strategies, before the metrics and milestones, remember why you first said yes. Remember the purity of your hunger for God's voice. That hunger is still the most powerful force in your life. Fifth, prepare your spirit to receive help from unexpected places. Your pride will be tempted to reject the provision that comes without your control. You will want to question the motives of those God sends. But know this: when the supply comes, your only job is to say thank you. Finally, anchor yourself in this truth: you do not need to see the entire blueprint to take the next step. You only need the faith to move when He says move. Let me be clear, this is not a call to passivity. This is a call to radical, courageous obedience. To wake up tomorrow and choose trust over certainty. To stand in front of what looks like ruin and declare, this will become a testimony. If you are unsure where to begin, start here. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and speak these words from your spirit. God, I release my need to understand everything. I let go of my insistence on guarantees. I confess that I have depended on visible support more than on your unseen provision. Today, I surrender my timelines, my strategies, and my pride. Lead me into what only you can sustain. Teach me to recognize your voice above every fear. I will follow you step by step, even when the path disappears beneath my feet. I choose trust. I choose surrender. I choose you. Feel those words settle in your heart. Feel the tension begin to loosen. You are not losing control. You are finally yielding it to the only one who was ever trustworthy. The next 3 days will be unlike any others. They will be the days when God starts to confirm what He has been whispering for so long. Watch carefully. The conversations you have, the opportunities that appear, the invitations that arrive, none of them will be coincidences. When you feel the nudge to take a step, do it. When you sense the stirring to release something, let it go. When you hear the quiet prompt to reach out, to ask, to risk, respond without delay. This is not the season to retreat. It is the season to move. If this message is piercing you, it is because your spirit recognizes its urgency. You are standing on the edge of a story that will require your whole heart. You are about to become the living evidence that God still provides in ways no human mind can comprehend. And when others see you, your peace, your progress, your unexplainable favor, they will have no choice but to ask, how did this happen? Your answer will be simple and unshakable. It was never about me. It was the one who called me, the one who provides, the one who never leaves. So if this message is for you, stop scrolling. Start praying. Let this be the moment you draw a line in the sand and declare that you will no longer be bound by the fear of lack. You will no longer be held captive by the craving for approval. You will no longer be controlled by the need to understand. You will walk forward with empty hands but a full heart, trusting that the God who called you has already provided everything you will need. This is your invitation. This is your crossing point. This is the hour you were created for. Take the step.